Alrighty, how are we doing today, folks? I hope you had a good weekend. Sorry I didn't make a couple videos in the last few days. I hurt my back, so I've kind of been on bed rest for a little bit. That's what happens when you're stupid and want to work out in very hot weather. Anyways, so let's get into it. I'm going to be talking again about crap my teacher said. So something my teacher said I believe it was January or February, right after Trump had come into office and he fired dozens of employees from the State Department. My teacher in my policy evaluation class expressed her concerns, saying basically that he was firing people who had been there for years, who were nonpartisan, blah, blah, blah. Basically just your average Joe person that just happens to work for the State Department. Okay, well now anyone that's an actual person knows that this is crap because everyone has a bias and everyone has a partisanship. And when you work in the government, it's probably even harder, or I know it's probably harder, to take away your bias and take away your partisanship from your work. Especially if, I don't know, you liked the president before, or if you just don't like the president now, which is has led to a lot of the problems with the leaks and the deep state conflict and kind of that whole civil war that's going on. That's continually going on, but has kind of been quiet for a minute or two. Anyways, so I wanted to speak about that because I want to speak about what Trump has done, or what Trump has done since coming into office. So it was a report yesterday that, and this is off of actually va.gov, and I believe it was pushed because of the Accountability Act. And the Accountability Act was signed for the VA in June, I believe. So just recently, basically what the Accountability Act would do for the VA would try to make it more transparent by making it easier to fire bad employees, basically bad government employees, but then also to promote whistleblowing, meaning if you see stuff that's wrong that's happening, if you see procedures not being followed, or if you see just bad care happening, like it has been happening with the VA, then you need to come out and say something about it. And that's the whole point. Now, yeah, obviously, it's kind of a political stunt in the sense of we're trying to show that we're making it more transparent in the VA, but also it is a bill, which means that it is law. And therefore needs to be followed, or should be followed, which I like. I like the accountability bill, and with the news now that Trump has, the report now that Trump has fired over 500 or around 500 people from the VA, that just shows how crappy our VA truly was, and how crappy the VA system has been, and that how the Obama administration just did nothing, really just did nothing towards it. In fact, probably even actually just made it worse, because when you throw money at things, throwing money doesn't mean direction. Throwing money doesn't mean guidance or even mean wisdom. It just means you're throwing money at things. And when you're throwing money at a bureaucratic system like that of the VA, or the one that at least was taken over by bureaucracy, well then who's getting the money? Including not the patients, especially when there's wait times and there's people basically dying on the floor. So I thought that this was interesting with my with my teacher saying and complaining, oh my God, he's firing all these people, and I'd like to hear what she'd say now with this report coming out as well. Maybe something around the same lines, though I don't quite know her exact opinion on the VA and how things are ran. I'm fairly sure that she, from what I can remember, didn't quite like the way it was ran either. Having said that, I thought that it was a good connect, because it just shows, and from my teacher's words, how much people think we need the federal government in every situation of our lives, or that we need it to be as big as it is. Okay, that's absolute crap, obviously, and I would hope that y'all would know that. And the reason why what she said connects to the firings of the VA and how she said it, and obviously she said it in the way to demean Trump and demean what Trump was doing, of how he's just being the big bad, new president guy that doesn't know what the hell he's doing, wrecking ball, just firing people out of nowhere that are actually doing the job, innocent, whatever. Stupid. Trump has stated, and this comes off of CBS from a little bit ago, so it's not really not too friendly to the right of a source, just stating that he wants to deconstruct the administrative state. What do you think Trump is going to do? Now, Trump is obviously different. Trump isn't just like every other president ever. Obviously not. Obviously. But what do you think a man who is going to run the government like he runs a company, which the companies very much, you come in, you get fired, you move, you leave. You don't necessarily give them all this, a couple months of notice or whatever. No, you fire them and they leave. That's how corporations work a lot of the time, if not most of the time. So how do you think a man who wants to run the government like a corporation, a man who clearly isn't afraid to say what's on his mind, and which can get him into trouble when he doesn't have a filter, which he said stupid things before, and things that are indefensible, and things, especially on the campaign trail, that were indefensible. However, what do you expect for this guy to do, who's been touting that he wants to deconstruct the administrative state, who's been touting support for the VA, and has been touting, in his whole speech, which his inauguration speech, which yes was kind of populist, but also just spoke about the forgotten man, the forgotten woman, and taking government power from the federal government and back to the people. How do you expect him to do that without firing a bunch of people, or without deconstructing parts of the administrative state and parts of bureaucracy? So all these people that are being fired now, if you hear any backlash from the left, which I don't know if you hear that much backlash from it, the only backlash you would probably hear is something that would be similar to my teacher, which is why this is an interesting point, that, oh, he's just firing all these people that have been there for years, or firing all these people with all this experience that have just put in the time, and yada 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 yada. Okay, well, if that's the point, then let's just never fire anyone from the government. Screw it. Let's never. I mean, we had to create a bill, an accountability bill, to make it easier to fire people from the failing VA in the first place. So, and to make it look more transparent, and hopefully smoothly be more transparent, which was said in a statement from the Trump administration, I believe yesterday, speaking upon all these firings. Excuse me. So then why not? It's ridiculous. People, and it all comes from the sentiment of, we need the federal government to be as big as it is, or we need the federal government to be in almost every, if not every aspect of Americans' life, some way, somehow, which is crap. I mean, even for example, even conservative Billy Kristol, which I like a lot of Billy Kristol's, I like a lot of his stuff. I like a lot of his opinions, though I think he's been overly. He's still kind of never Trump, and never Trump is over. Trump won. Never Trump is over. I might have flirted with that for a second just because I didn't like him that much, but I voted for Trump because I realized the two options I had at hand and which one was more conservative and which one wasn't going to drive us to the left. So, Bill Kristol, he tweeted out about an hour ago saying, I thought it was the Freedom Caucus, not the Wall Caucus. This is because Mark Meadows, one of the chairman for the Freedom Caucus, basically said that the chair threatens to shut down. He threatens to shut down the government over the border wall. He threatened to shut down the government over the border wall. So the border wall, I think, is very important. I like the border wall. I'm not much for government spending, of course, as a constitutional conservative. I think the federal government spends way too much. I think they have way too much power, and therefore have given themselves way too much prerogative power in order to spend. However, something like national defense, something like national security, like immigration, which is a federal problem, should have money spent on. Like a border wall, which would statistically stop many illegal border crossings. Of course, if you have a wall, that's obviously the point that doesn't need any further explanation. And yeah, people are always gonna try to find ways around the wall. People try to find ways around anything, but just because you try to find ways around anything doesn't mean that thing isn't necessary. Okay, because we can go down the line of any law, of a bunch of laws, of saying, well, why do we have speed limit laws if people are just going to break it or find a way to break it? Well, then just get rid of them. The argument just comes down to being that stupid. Anyway, so Bill Kristol, I like him, but and I tweeted back actually. I tweeted back saying, well, what's more free than the federal government being shut down for a little bit? People think that we need the federal government, like we need it running all the time, or else the country's going to go to gonna burn. Going to crash and burn, and we don't know what we're going to do with our lives. Really, how much, other than the federal government sticking its nose in your business, how much do you physically reach out to the federal government and say, God, I really need to go to the DMV today? Not much, because the DMV sucks, and everyone knows it and never wants to deal with it, to the point where they even make online appointments, and they try to do stuff online. The shutdown of federal government really isn't that big of a deal. And Obama actually, when he was in office, when it happened, blaming it on the conservatives, and all he did was basically forcefully shut down a few parks to make it look like, oh, all this big stuff was happening and the government was shutting down and people weren't going to get their welfare check or their Medicaid check or whatever else and yada yada and people are going to die. It's always hysteria. It's always hysteria from the left. And then when you have fellow conservatives who, yeah, I get it, you don't like Trump. We get it. You do not like Trump. Fine. But now you need to go from a position of, I don't like Trump, therefore I'm not going to support anything or most of the things that he supports. Or even the Freedom Caucus. With the Freedom Caucus, they shut down the Obamacare Light 1. They shut down Trump Care the first time because they said this isn't conservative enough. Honestly, and then when you want to attack them, what I'm trying to say is basically that, and trying to exemplify it through people on the right and the left. And this is just one person on the right, of course. But that there's just, I feel common sentiment nowadays that we need the federal government. That we need it in so many aspects of our lives. Which, in fact, we don't. I mean, honestly, we don't. You know how to run your life. I know how to run mine. I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. That's the freedom of America. That we have the option to choose the path and really the destiny of our life. The destiny of our life. And then we now face the consequences of the good actions, the bad actions that we take. And then when the federal government tries to make every action equal, meaning not better or worse than anyone else's, materials, speaking on tangible terms, well, it's just crappy for everyone because not everyone's the same. Not everyone has the same talents. Not everyone has the same know-how, the same work ethic, or even the same morals and intellect. All across the board. Anyways, folks, so basically, just to reiterate what my teacher said, that she was losing her mind, not losing her mind, but she was exasperated by how Trump was firing all these honest, hard-working State Department people. Well, when you have a president, like I said, to wrap up, that wants to deconstruct the administrative state, that wants to change the government, that wants to, as he stated at least, we're going to continue seeing, and I like a lot of the conservative things that he's done so far. Obviously, there's some things I can critique him on as well, from my own opinion, my own standpoint. But for my professor to say that, it just shows the mindset, the common mindset. And then for a conservative, someone on the right who just doesn't like Trump to say, what he said about the Freedom Caucus, it just shows that there's a common sentiment nowadays that we somehow need the federal government in all these different ways of our lives, which is wrong, which is absolute crap. And be wary of when your professor speaks on such terms of when President Trump does something that deconstructs some part of the government that would actually make you more free, they try to sell it as irresponsible because that means that there's more power in your hand, is really what it comes down to. And they're trying to sell it as irresponsible because, there's less people watching over these certain things that the federal government ought to be doing. No, the federal government shouldn't ought to be doing it. It just happened to be that way because you have FDR and you have liberal presidents past there, and even Nixon was starting the EPA, and presidents basically just building up the administrative state to the point where now we actually probably need some things like Trump to come in and just fire people and just get rid of them in positions we don't need. Because the country was built upon individual liberty, individual freedom, and the power for you to choose your own life. Anyways, folks, let me know how you like this video. Let me know if it connects or not, or what your opinions are, or comments, likes, don't likes, hatred. Doesn't matter to me. Share this video around, and just let me know. Thank you so much. I'll come out with another video soon on crap my teachers say. So hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you later. My name's Wyatt, and I'm the College Conservative.